Hello, I'm here at the Downey space plant, and Jerry, would you please introduce yourself with your full name and a little bit of your history in this place? You're now running a nonprofit here, but I want a little backstory and what's immediately behind you. And go ahead.
Well, my name is Jerry Blackburn. I'm currently president of the Aerospace Legacy Foundation, and this is our home. We have offices here at the old Kaufman wing of the Downey. This used to be previously EMSCO aircraft. There's about an 80-year history on this site. Vultee aircraft, North American Aviation, Rockwell International, and finally Boeing up until 1999. I had a 40-year career in aerospace, and about 35 years of it was right here at this plant.
So you were here when Boeing decided to close.
Yes.
So you've stayed on, and you're now stewarding this.
Well, after I retired in 2003, I became more active with the organization, and they elected me president. And so the main mission and goal of this foundation is to preserve America's heritage from aerospace and to honor the men and women who gave so much of their lives to these programs and to this kind of site. And so one of the very first challenges we had was to make sure that we didn't lose all of the site, that some of it was preserved.
And so right behind you, I'm going to say today's date is the 29th of November?
Yes.
29th
of November.
Okay, it's the 29th of November 2012. Jerry, tell us what's behind you and what's happening.
Well, you know, it's been a long road to.
We'll get a little backstory later, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening right now is the property is being redeveloped. There for quite a while after they closed, Downey Studios were operating here as a movie and film facility, and they were successful for many years, but the industry changed. It changed dramatically, and there was an option with the property owners that they could exercise to redevelop it if the studio was not viable. And that happened, of course. And so the new development is looking at different kinds of facilities, and the adaptive reuse of the buildings was not considered to be possible. And so that ended up in the issuing of a demolition contract. And so what's happening behind me right now is we're in the last phases of demolition. All of the major buildings that were here have been destroyed or demolished, and we're down to the last two buildings, which will probably be gone by the end of this year.
Can you quickly, we have a map, and we're going to look at
Sure.
we have not a map, we have a really great photo with an overview, but quickly, the last two buildings that are up, what happened there in the heyday, in the Apollo days of this plant's history?
Well, the building immediately behind me here, that's just a steel frame right now that you're looking at, was called Building 6. And its construction dates from the late 50s. It was primarily an engineering services building for the X-10 Navajo, and part of some of the Joe work went on here. It was the missile days of the site. And then, of course, later on, it became preeminent in the Apollo program and later the shuttle program. The larger building that's still standing that has the blue mural on it, that is Building 290. And that building was constructed in early 60s for the Apollo program. It was the Apollo Final Assembly and Checkout building.
And this was a clean room.
Yes, as a
So,
matter of
so you
fact.
need to explain to us
Right.
and qualify this specific clean room, because it has some bragging rights.
Well, very early on in the aerospace manned spaceflight program, we recognized the need for what we call contamination control. You've probably seen a lot of these images of rockets blowing up on the pad. Well, the majority of that was due to contaminants that were getting into the systems and destroying these vehicles. So we developed a whole technology around cleaning these systems and preserving the cleanliness, which was the genesis for clean rooms. And so when the Apollo program came around, we knew that that was going to be a major component of the final assembly and checkout area. So this high bay building was actually, as you say, it was a clean room, certified clean room, to a class 100,000, which was pretty restrictive. I mean, you had to wear the bunny suits and the booties and the hats and all of that. We had a special air filtration system. And at the time, it was the largest clean room in the world.
And now it's about to be demolished.
Well, it was the largest clean room for about 9 months, and then of course the Russians built a new one that was bigger. That was the game that was played back in the space race days.
Why does the Smithsonian care that all this stuff
Well,
is
of
coming
course.
down?
I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people that care. They care about the history. They care about what went on. I have yet to find one person that I haven't had the opportunity to show the building to that hasn't come out and remarked and felt the historical presence of the building. However, all that being said, is you may care about that history, but we all live in a world that face realities of a different nature.
There are finite resources.
There are the economic realities, and of course now, you know, if you look at some of the maps of the area, the one thing I'm starting to draw people's attention to is the fact that even though the predominant amount of the real estate and the buildings here on this site have been demolished, they're not lost. I mean, we have wonderful archives of photographs. There are people like myself who've got wonderful memories and can tell those stories and share that. So as long as we're here, it's like the loss of a loved one. We're still here. We can still talk about it and share that. But there still are buildings. If you go just south of Imperial Highway, there are 4 buildings over there that were part of the Apollo program. They were the simulation buildings. We did the hydraulics design over there, and all of those have been adaptively reused by LA County. One of them is now the probation offices for LA County. The other 3 are part of the LA County Office of Education. There are 2 other buildings on the east side of the property that are now part of the Kaiser Permanente Hospital complex and their corporate offices. So there are still some remnants of that history here. It's sad that we've lost some of the more significant elements, but once again, it's the economic realities of our time, and it'll be making way for something new, and
Right.
we'll have to see what that is.
We have a wonderful photograph. If we could just come around, if you could walk us, tell us what we're looking at, the plant.
Well, this photograph,
and this photo, so tell us where this photograph is. We're in Downey. Just sort of give us, or orient us, and then I want you to walk us back through time, because I know that the EMSCO facade is still intact.
Yes.
So why don't you orient us where we are, and then start with the EMSCO facade, which is, I think, the oldest facade, or one of the older facades in this facility. We can get a sense of how this site is really an incredibly important and old site in aviation and aerospace in Los Angeles County.
You're looking at an aerial photograph that is fairly recent. It was taken probably about 2004, 2005. You can see part of the early construction of the Kaiser Permanente Hospital complex. The basic nature of the property, this is a good view. The original property was 160 acres. It's bounded by Stewart and Gray on the north. This is the Lakewood Boulevard on the west. This particular street used to be called Clark Avenue. It was renamed by the city, calling it Columbia Way now. On the extreme eastern side of the property, you have Bellflower Boulevard, and then in the south is the bounding of Imperial Highway. So within this complex, when it developed over its 80 years, as you said, this was all orange groves and bean fields. It was part of a complex called the Hunan Ranch. It was bought by an industrialist by the name of E.M. Smith, who was a major oil industrialist here in Southern California. And he wanted to start an aircraft company, and he called it EMSCO. The very first building was, if you notice in this photograph, this gray roof line, there's a brick facade on the boulevard area with a horseshoe turnout. That facade was the EMSCO engineering office, and the hangars were all behind it.
And this is Lakewood Boulevard. This
Right.
is again
Stewart and Gray.
Stewart and Gray, and this is Columbia.
Columbia
So,
Way.
just so people when they
Right.
go drive by know where to look.
That EMSCO facade dates from 1929. E.M. Smith started his company in August of 1929, and of course we all know, unfortunately, what happened in October of 1929.
Yeah.
So it was shortly after that that another gentleman by the name of Bert Kenner, who had an aircraft company over in Glendale, needed to expand. So he came over, bought the facility, and started his company called Security Aircraft. At that time, there was one airfield that ran right down basically east-west through this area here, and it served the security aircraft operations. And then after Bert left, a young man by the name of Jerry Voltee, who was the chief engineer for Lockheed, the Lockheed brothers, he started Voltee Aircraft. And he took over and started the major expansion up through the war. The rest of these, building one here, was built in bits and pieces over that period of time. Jerry and his wife, unfortunately, were killed in an air crash coming back from Washington in the early 30s, and so it was left to his successors to carry on the Voltee tradition. And up until right after the war, about 46, that's when North American Aviation came to the property. They needed to expand from their El Segundo operations, and so they took over the facility. By that time, there was a major north-south runway that ran all the way from the corner up here by Stewart and Gray and Bellflower, ran all the way down here to the corner of Imperial and Clark. And you can still see some of the remnants, even in this photograph, of that major runway complex. But most of that will be gone by the time the development continues to go.
Can you show us, when we started this video, we were looking at a semi-demolished structure. Tell us.
That's this building 6 complex that you see right here.
Right.
And you saw the high bay, low bay complex of building 290.
290 being the clean room.
The clean room and the Apollo final assembly area. And as I said, this will be the last that'll come down probably within the next 30 to 60 days.
If you could quickly show us, I know from talking to you, I'm not sure when this coordinate system came into being, but I know that there was an
Yes.
internal coordinate system to this site. And if you could just maybe show us where the compass point, I know that there were compass points.
Right.
So
As a matter of fact, what we're hoping to do, this is one of the contributions we're planning on making for this historical preservation. In the, right here on the boulevard, in about 1940, there was a rotunda, which is a round building that was built with an executive office over it. And when that was constructed, in the floor, they put matter of fact, there's a picture of it, the emblem.
I'll go get it. Can I?
Yeah, just pull it up. Consolidated Voltee had this mosaic embedded into the floor of the rotunda.
We put it down here.
And this is a picture of that. As you can see, it's the eagle, which was the emblem of the Voltee Aircraft Company. Right here on the chest, you can barely make it out, but there's a brass marker. Now, with a complex as large as this, one of the things that you have is a problem of, well, where am I and how do I get around?
Sure.
And this was long before the days of GPS. So this is probably our pre-GPS tool. The marker was identified as being north, south, east, west, 0. And
So
then,
this would be Greenwich.
exactly.
This would be Greenwich.
If you measured off of there in compass directions in increments of 20 feet, then there would be a north 5 and west 10.
Okay, so quickly, tell me what were the coordinates then for 292?
It would have been, they would have been south coordinates and they would have been east because they would have been east of the market.
Right.
So most of them, in any place you went in the building, if you went into an office, right over the door of the office, it would be south 125, east 7. And the advantage of that was if
You knew where you were.
I knew where I was, and more importantly, if somebody was trying to find me, I could tell them where to come. And you know, a lot of the aircraft companies used to use column numbers for the beams, and they would have column A, B, C, and so forth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But with this grid network, we were able to grid the entire property, so it didn't matter where there was a building or where you were, you could always find yourself with a coordinate system. So our plan is to create, we're going to create an e-tour system.
Oh, good.
What you will be able to do in the near future is you will come to a visitor's kiosk that will be here on the property. And at that kiosk, you will either be able to download an app or get a smart device that will allow you to walk the property. And so maybe you go over here to building 290, and this might be what was building 290, and this might be a
Super Walmart.
Super Walmart or something, but you'll be standing in Super Walmart and it will tell you you're at GPS location such and such. You're also at South 19, East 35, what used to be Jerry Blackburn's office or something like that.
I just am working with some software to let you do that. We'll have a nice talk when we're done
Oh,
filming.
good.
Nice talk.
Okay.
Tap into museums. You're gonna love it. Okay, Jerry, quickly. We need to wrap this up. Quickly show us where Aerojet was. Aerojet was not part of this complex, but Aerojet being founded by Jack Parsons, someone I think about a lot. You need to, people want to know.
Well, again,
Just
Southern California had a marvelous matrix of aerospace companies and so forth. Stewart and Gray Road, as it comes up here past Woodruff, this complex back here was Aerojet. And they did a lot of contract work. They did support contract for us.
They did the command module for Apollo, if I'm not mistaken. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Well, no, the command module was done by North American here at Downey. We built the command module. Aerojet built certain components.
Yes, that's right. That's what I meant. They were involved.
They were what we call a support contractor.
I didn't mean to imply they built the command module. I'm sorry. I did.
And by the way, you know, in terms of support contractors, there were over 3,000 contractors that supported this program all over the country. Fortunately, a good number of them, and out of necessity, they were right here in Southern California. One of the recent things that I just did was a presentation on this historical narrative, and it's curious because we have what I call the Lakewood Corridor, and if you look at a map, and you take Lakewood Boulevard, which by the way used to be called Cerritos Road, but Lakewood Boulevard, if I go down to the extreme south end, I'm at the Douglas Aircraft.
Right.
And if I come north, I hit the Downey plant. And if I continue north, I go to Northrop and Pico Rivera. And
we're going to have a great driving tour one day. We need to wrap this up. I'm wondering if we look out this window, if you'll be able to tell us about the boxing ring. Or if we can see the boxing ring.
Unfortunately you can't, but what you can see, and this is a very interesting story, I was talking with some retirees from the old Vultee days, and you see this very large tree right out the window.
I thought that was the tree, that's why.
Okay, and this large tree and this parking lot area here, actually, he tells me, he says, do you remember, did you know that we had a boxing ring?
You're not facing the camera. So
we had a boxing ring on the property here. And I said, really? And I thought he was pulling my leg, and he said, no, we really did. It was a boxing ring. I said, what would you possibly use it for? He said, well, you got to remember, this is just pre-war and war days. There was nothing around here. There was no place to go. You did 12-hour shifts. You would come here. You needed some time to vent and so forth. And so he says, we had this boxing ring, and you could go out there and kind of exercise. Of course, I asked him, I said, it sounds like it would be a great management tool for taking care of some management issues. So my curiosity got the best of me, and we started going through the archives. Finally, we came up with this photograph, and in this photograph, you can see right here, this is the boxing ring.
That's the boxing ring.
Which would have been right there where that tree is right now. So a lot of history, a lot of wonderful history regarding this facility and what's happened.
I'm going to step back into the frame, Jerry. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to thank you very much. We have a
Pleasure.
lot of work to do, and I want to thank everyone. And we're going to sign off.